Darkwood is a top-down psychological horror game about an unnamed man who becomes trapped inside a nightmarish and inescapable forest. Atmosphere. Darkwood's atmosphere is really something special. It manages to be frightening by being foreboding and mysterious. It invokes a fear of the unknown by being strange and unforgiving, and it never really explains what's happening to the forest. Spending any time exploring and there's a feeling of being incomprehensibly small against a vast enemy that you're trapped within. In the same way that Silent Hill made its protagonists feel like the town itself is the enemy, Darkwood does the same with its forests. It seems to keep on going forever, and the game's length and numerous haunting environments leave the player hopeless and at the mercy of their surroundings. Its colour palette is full of muted and drab colours, sickly greens and yellows, with the earth itself being a lifeless grey, and it makes it overwhelmingly obvious that the land has been corrupted and pushed against its nature by something. But the new hostile nature has taken over, making the whole forest seem unnatural. With the limited field of vision, you always end up feeling vulnerable since you can't see the sheer number of traps, enemies and environmental hazards that are all around you. It's a major disadvantage, but also a realistic one in a top-down game. As the sun goes down, you're forced to barricade yourself into a safe house and defend yourself to the best of your ability until the sun rises. And hearing noises outside and seeing strange lights appear in the wood raises tension to an inconceivable level as you hide from things you don't understand. It feels pointless to defend yourself against paranormal and supernatural horrors with a piece of wood, but that's all you can do. The survival elements give the game a gritty edge, and will often give you the feeling that you need to keep pushing yourself to go one step further into the burnt out building, or come back to some place hostile to open that one crate you saw. Darkwood is one of the few games that truly generates a fear of the unknown by never explaining itself or revealing its scope to the player. You aren't meant to understand. It has without doubt one of the best atmospheres of any game I've ever played. That's one Harry Mason. Scares. The game's scares are almost entirely organic, though there are some scripted events in dream sequences. Thanks to the atmosphere, the tension is already as high as it can possibly be, and for example, stepping onto an unseen bear trap is loud and can very easily startle the player. But the true horror is the realization that you're now trapped there until your character can free themselves, making you even more vulnerable than normal. The combat is difficult and makes even basic interactions with most enemies dangerous, and on normal difficulty, dying is punished by losing half your inventory at the spot you died, making you travel back to a dangerous area with less gear than you had when you first arrived to reclaim your lost things. The enemies themselves range from basic dogs to mutated horrors that scream and gurgle in pain as they throw their own body parts at you, and thanks to the wind-up nature of the combat, they're extremely difficult to deal with even something as advanced and rare as a pistol. But what the game does well is how it layers all of these things on top of each other with the limited vision, hiding in your safe house at night with horrific creatures screaming and breaking down your barricades as you try to avoid standing in your own bear traps and dealing with them before they deal with you. Darkwood layers everything magnificently, and mixing its gameplay elements over the atmosphere, it manages to create fear effortlessly without resorting to jump scares. That's 2 Harry Masons. Sound design. Darkwood has some of the best sound design I've ever heard. The music can be incredibly unsettling but also melancholy with its selection of dark ambient pieces. The nighttime music sounds heady and twisted like madness is creeping into your ears, and the sad pianos that play as the sun rises remind that you survived another night, but there's only so much daylight until nighttime comes again. There's some brilliantly creepy dog howling noises that warbles through what sounds like an old speaker, and a foreboding track that sounds like an immense roaring rumble soaked in reverb. And each location has its own music. Though they do repeat, the music that's on offer is absolutely brilliant. The sound effects are so crisp that it's unpleasant. The level of detail in the sound of creatures slurping and crackling is frankly sickening. Lots of noises are just indescribable, and the game's sound space is frankly perfect. When you leave an area, a sound doesn't go away, it muffles and fades out until it's out of range, and it's very easy to place where something is by sound alone thanks to the brilliant directional audio. There's a lot of reverb too, with the whole game feeling very spacious. There's no voice acting to speak of, with all of the dialogue being done with text, and that's something to talk about in another section. Really though, Darkwood's sound design is extremely impressive. That's 3 Harry Masons. Gore. Whilst the screen flashes up red when you stand in a bear trap or are attacked by an enemy, the real gore comes in the form of body horror from the various transformations you see of people unlucky enough to be absorbed by the forest, from the mushroom men who run at the player with sickening crunching noises and laughter as they explode into a cloud of blood, to the people who have been absorbed into a tree and can't figure out what's happened to them, mushrooms growing over their faces and fusing them to the environment. The game spares no detail during dialogue to explain the unfortunate fate of people who are unlucky enough not to get away. It's deeply disturbing and difficult to read, with ambiguous drawings making you wonder which part of the thing shown is meant to be human or was meant to be human. The gore is deeply unpleasant when it's not harrowing. That's 4 Harry Masons. Story. The game opens with a prologue where you play as a doctor who saves a man injured in the forest only to beat him up and rob him before disappearing. Then there's a transition to you playing as the man the doctor saved, and the goal becomes to reclaim your things and leave the forest. The game's story takes pleasure in not explaining things, and much of the backstory to the forest just isn't explained, and some things are inconsistent anyway. There's several characters, but it depends who you choose to interact with as to who you'll get to know, with some of them coming across as menacing and evil, untrustworthy, deranged, ominous, or just sad and pathetic, trying to survive just like you. Their quest lines usually involve you doing things for them and helping them find peace or solving their problems so you can get an item to progress. The quest lines themselves were often left ambiguous sometimes as to whether you did the right thing, with the game revealing at the end the outcomes of some of the choices you made. I'm not sure if there are other endings, but the ending I got, the plot feels unresolved, and many things are still unclear. It's satisfying to have reached the end, but there's an uncertain feeling that you're not that far away from danger still. The story is vague, it's clearly meant to be, but it provides such an enticing mystery with many things to wonder about, from character origins to what really started the forest on its corrupted path, that it's intriguing to speculate about. Making the final score 5 out of 5 Harry Masons. Darkwood is an incredibly atmospheric, intense, and unsettling game that completely took me by surprise. It's insanely impressive, and there's so many things to talk about that I don't think I could do it all in one video. Again, I'd like to remind you this whole thing is down to my opinion in horror games, and if you don't share this opinion, then that's cool, I get it. There will always be more horror reviews in the pipeline, and thanks for watching. You can always go check out Bumps in the middle of the night. Peace.